Hey, my friends, we are going to take a look at today the second edition of the Bonefire Tarot by Gabby Angus West, which I had done a review of the first mass market edition way back when that came out. It was a long time ago. Or maybe it wasn't, and I just remember it being a long time ago. But it was. I think it was one of the first decks that I reviewed because I never wanted this channel to be a deck review channel or an unboxing channel. And one thing that you learn very quickly when you start a YouTube tarot channel or similar is that you need content, and there's only so much you can say about like tutorials and stuff. But anyway, I do enjoy doing reviews occasionally. And one of the things I actually really like is doing comparisons between old editions and new editions. So that's why I decided to do this. I was pretty tough on this deck when it came out. Now, that version, that edition, wasn't its first iteration. There were at least two independent editions that came first. And so this was my first experience with it. I think this also kind of was early on, I feel like, in the trend of mass market decks getting picked up by mainstream publishers. And Schiffer Red Feather was weirdly sort of at the forefront of that, but also doing it very badly. And one of the things that has stopped me from ever sort of using this deck is the production quality, which is some of the worst cardstock I've ever come across, and Schiffer did that for a very long time. And I have no idea what this cardstock is going to be like. I'm assuming it's better because their decks have been, at least from a cardstock standpoint. But this to me was unshuffleable. And actually, when I had shuffled it. When I was putting it back in order, I kept losing cards. Like, where's this card? And then I realized it was stuck to another card. So it's that glossy cardstock that is unforgivable, and that Schiffer was so married to for such a long time. I think I edged this in black myself. I wanted this deck to be great. I wanted to love it. I wanted it to be wonderful. And I also had some problems with the deck itself. I felt like for all the love it was getting, I felt like it wasn't diverse enough. And I felt like it wasn't well produced. So my problem with the deck itself was I felt like for all the like love it was getting in the tarot community at the time from people, this was kind of like early on in the like tarot so white conversation. The very people who were saying that were also like, oh my god, this deck's amazing. And to me, it didn't feel quite amazing in that regard. But I liked it enough to want to pick up this version of it, this new edition. Partly I just buy things to make videos sometimes, but the book I always thought was nicely done. Schiffer does a nice job with their books. This book is quite nice. Production-wise, I don't know if I read it, but I'll take a gander at it. You're here to see the cards. I'm here to see the cards. So let's take a look at the cards. So nice packaging. The deck comes edged in red, which I find quite exciting. That's very cool. It's much smaller, too. And I think that this is on par with what the Indie edition was like. It's borderless. I don't think the Indie edition was. If you've been around here for a while, I actually like borders on decks, particularly decks this busy, because I find it just breaks things up a little bit, but I know that I'm in the minority there. The backs are a little different in that they're in color, in living color, but you can see how much smaller it is without the border. I've never been wild about this back either, to be totally honest with you. I just don't like when backs say things. So, I think those are all the things to get out of the way that I did not enjoy. There are new cards in this edition. Some of them have been revised, so that's why I wanted to do a walkthrough. It's about as thick, but given that this is a matte cardstock, it looks, well, yeah, you can see that it's that matte finish, rather than this gloss. I'm thinking it's going to be easier to shuffle. I guess the other thing to disclose is that I had pre-ordered this edition and had no idea when it was going to ship, and I just happened to be out on my normal boredom visit to the bookstore and saw a copy of this. So I don't even think this is out yet, but I'm not sure. Sometimes my bookshops the local ones will just put things out when they get them rather than when they're released. But it's also possible that my pre-order just didn't happen yet, but I canceled it. So anyway, with all of that said, let's take a look-see at the cards. Like I said, there are some different cards. There were some revisions made to this. I will shuffle it to give you an impression of how this different cardstock shuffles. I will say that given that this is not glossy, you can kind of see that glossy stock. I think why artists and publishers like it is because it really makes the colors look bold. And if you watch my guy on YouTube, the art restoration guy, Julian Baumgartner, who I just have a massive crush on, you can see when he does painting restorations, when he varnishes them, how much gloss, makes the colors pop. But I've never liked glossy cardstock, especially when it makes it impossible to shuffle, which this was. So let's do a little comparison. The titles, though there aren't borders on this, are woven into the art. So you'll be able to see them, but they're not in the same place, which I'm fine with. So here's the Fool. So we've got a Magician. Now, I always liked this Magician. I don't dislike this Magician. I quite like it, in fact. But I did always kind of like this card. He's very handsome. Sorry, I got distracted. Here's the High Priestess. Here's the Empress. I think I like the original one better, but I don't mind this one. It's a little more unsettling, I guess. But this is an improved Emperor to me in that I always found this face. This is a deck with weird faces too. I'll say that. Like I say that it's just faces. People are hard to draw, so like let's just give the artist, grace there. But I do think that this Emperor is more effective. I think that the bald eagle here on the card is more prevalent, which I think adds kind of a level to it. That's layered, but I like the layers of this card. So this looks pretty similar. The Lovers, the Chariot. So I think we're getting more clearly an attempt to make the deck a little more representation. So from, I would say that this does not present as a white passing person, but I think from maybe a little more nebulous and male presenting, we get more female presenting and certainly less white passing. So Strength hasn't changed. The Hermit hasn't changed. There's a sadness or a weariness to the people in this deck, which is interesting. Wheel of Fortune, Justice, Hanged Man, Death. I do dig the size of this. Like, I'm really curious to shuffle this. I'm wondering, because it's so small, if it's going to riffle. Temperance is more or less the same. Oops, I reversed the Devil and the Tower. So the Tower is similar. The Devil is the same. The Star. This is one of the tattoo, I think it's supposed to be tattoo inspired artistically. So I guess this was like when it came out, like I just wanted it to be so much better than I felt like it was. I was really upset about the cardstock. I really disliked that situation. But I sort of felt like, I don't know, it needed work. Certainly from a production quality standpoint. So those are the majors. Now we're going to get into the wands, the minors. I really love the red edging on this. I think that's very sexy. So score on that one. This is new. That looks like Adele, I think. Go easy on the baby. 6 of Wands. 7 of Wands. So it's obviously a Waitsmith deck. It's, I think, for folks who feel busy decks or a little sensory overload, I think you'll find that's the case here. I go back and forth. Like, I don't mind the busy deck. I prefer in the deck a neutrality. But I think the thing that I'll struggle with this one is that the titles for all the cards are there, but they're very, very sort of woven into the image. Do you know what I mean? So we'll see when I shuffle it how I feel about that, because I really do like to know immediately what I'm looking at. It's just part of how I read. I feel like I need to get a sense immediately of what it is I'm seeing. So that could be problematic. Some of them are clearer than others. It's a new King of Wands. Oh, this jumps to Swords. All right, let's jump to Swords. I mean, so much of tarot comes down to taste, right? Like, I mean, in terms of the styles that we read in terms of the art that we enjoy. So even doing reviews is really just sort of saying, does this match my taste? You know, and I think one of the difficulties for reviewers, certainly for me, is that when I am reviewing a deck, I sometimes feel like I'm being hard on it, and that's not fair to the artist. But really, I'm just filtering the deck through my own perceptions of what, you know, of what tarot is, or I think tarot should be. Or what I look for in a deck. So when I was, you know, and I mean, I feel like we've been having the same conversations now for 10 years. And things really aren't dramatically different than they were, you know, 10 years ago. I think attempts get made. I think usually they're very minor. I think, you know, I think the gatekeeping power of the publishing industry is worse than it was 10 years ago, frankly. I think that the publishers are less adventurous than they were 10 years ago. I think they have hooked on an outdated business model of kind of social media popularity and ease. You know, and by ease, I don't mean like necessarily ease of read. I mean, they want things that are unoffensive. They want things that are unlikely to be controversial. They want things that are unlikely to make people feel things, honestly. And I see this not just with tarot decks. I see it with books. I see it in the kind of content that's being made available in the mass market. And when I say that, what I'm meaning is that these are the kinds of things that, not this deck, although I did find this in a mass market store, you see in mass market stores a sort of, anybody can do it. You know, you don't need experience, you don't need learning, you know, which is what I mean by easy, but it's not necessarily effective. And I think that's really in line with the way that social media has gone. I think anybody, you know, who has a deck of any kind can promote themselves as a diviner. And I'm not really interested in gatekeeping who and who cannot do that. But I guess I'm interested in gatekeeping who gets credit for having skill. You know what I mean? Like, and this is the thing I was just writing about recently. Like, I don't know. I don't necessarily believe in certifications. I don't necessarily believe in endorsements. I do think something the World Divination Association is doing is interesting, which is like they are doing kind of an endorsement, or like a, you know, this reader has sort of demonstrated an ability. It's not a certification. It's sort of saying that we as an organization, have seen that this person demonstrates, enough skill to do this. I think, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. I think it's more interesting to me than certification programs. But I also think buyer beware, when push comes to shove. I think, that's what it comes down to, I guess, because I don't really believe in gatekeeping. But I do believe in in demonstrating ability, Some people don't need classes and books and workshops. Some people can pick up a deck and it's they can just read, and they can read well. I used to think you needed a certain amount of life experience to read well. I don't necessarily think that anymore, because I've worked with some very young readers who are excellent. So I think I maybe needed more life experience when I started. But I don't think everyone does. So I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all thing, which is why I also think you can't, I think certifications can't necessarily solve the problem. It does, I guess, ultimately come down to buyer beware. And again, when it comes to decks, like when I don't like a deck and I sort of wish that a deck were different, that's just me. If you've come to this channel, and you've watched more of my videos, you know what I'm going to say when I pick up a deck. Nothing I don't think in these videos, in these reviews, should surprise you. You know what I mean? You know me. Or this version of me, anyway. So, I don't know. I'm just rambling right now while we talk. So, again, there aren't major shifts to the deck. I think it was a popular enough deck that doesn't warrant it. I do think some effort was made to diversify it. I think maybe those could have been taken further. But again, it's rare, in my experience, that an artist will say, okay, I will make an attempt to do more. I think that is... I wouldn't say it's commendable, but I think given how long it takes to create a tarot deck and how difficult painting is, to make major revisions to something that you worked hard on, I think is I think coming back to revisit something and say, what could I have improved? What could I have done differently? Is, for me as a writer, inevitable and important, right? Because it's a second draft. It's a third draft. It's, it's an opportunity to come back and revisit. We have a very finite, fatalistic tendency in modern life to say, oh, well, this deck is what it is, and it can never be anything different, or this person can't change, or we can't learn and grow. But really, the whole point of divination is that we do learn and grow. We do change. And I don't know. Again, I'm just rambling. So that's the comparison. Let's take a peek at how the new edition shuffles. And we'll lay out some of the cards. And I'm really curious to see how I'm going to react to knowing what the titles are, because that's the big thing. I'm also curious to see if I can riffle shuffle this, because it's small. It's a workout, but it's doable. I think they'll probably break in. They certainly shuffle exponentially better than this bullshit cardstock. I don't know if I can manage a bridge with this. Kind of, not really. Riffle shuffling is important to me because I feel like overhand shuffling does not mix the cards up enough. I mean, I do it for sure, but I like this size. I wish it were a little thinner, but that's a quibble. I'll let you be the judge of whether or not it's improved from a representational standpoint. I think it, given the other version, I think it's definitely a step in the right direction. And I think it's evocative. I think there's a reason why this deck has been so popular. I'm curious to see if it has sort of a resurgence now. This may very well become easier to shuffle. And overhand shuffles really nicely. It is a workout, but I think, riffle shuffling it a lot will will definitely break it in. It's going to get a bow, but I think you can just bend it back. I don't mind when I'm shuffling a deck and it bows, you know what I mean? Like, I have a, yes, I never really show because it's not sanctioned. I have a sort of off-brand copy of the Greenwood deck, which I absolutely love. I only use it for me because it was printed through Make Playing Cards, and there's a lot of weirdness with this deck, being in terms of the artist disappeared, and the co-creators may or may not have the right or license to reproduce it. Traditionally, that's the case. You know, some folks may be like, oh, why am I bringing this deck into this conversation? Let me just finish the thought. This deck is very bowed because of the way I shuffle it. And I showed a friend of mine, and they were like, oh my God, you're a monster. But I'm rough with my decks. Anyway, that deck really holds a bow because of the shape, or because of the sort of playing card stock that it's on. I love that deck to a degree that I shouldn't, which is another reason I only use it for me. It sits on my work table. Anyway, the point of that was I don't mind when decks get bowed. Now, just since I'm on the top while I shuffle this and try to break it in a little bit, the Greenwood is a very strange situation. It sounded like it was going to be coming back into print a couple years ago, and that never seemed to happen. There's an online, rumor, and I can't find any truth in it, but that the creator, who has sort of hidden themselves away, is fine with the art being out, and with people printing the deck as long as it's not commercially produced. And you frequently can find a printable version of it on Make Playing Cards, but you will also find that it will suddenly disappear because it's been reported as copyright infringement. So, very strange situation. Anyway, I managed to get that during a moment where it was actually up there. Now, the people who do this don't make any profit off of it, much like my Multi-Marseille, although I did create that, so I have the rights to it, essentially. But I made that available also as sort of a Creative Commons license. So yeah, I don't know. The Greenwood, interesting. I have to tell you, though, I get some of the most beautiful readings for myself with that deck. And so I actually wish it would come back into print. While the Wildwood is lovely, there's something about the Greenwood, even in that sort of unsanctioned, I don't want to call it a bootleg version because of the conditions under which it was created, printed rather, but it's certainly not authorized, which I normally would never do. I would normally never do that, but this is a weirdly, I don't know. Maybe the creator realized that they had a certain power that they didn't want to deal with, because that deck's powerful. I don't know. But anyway, the Wildwood is lovely. That Greenwood, there's just something about it. All right, let me stop rambling, because I've been going on for now. I'm surprised if anyone's still with me, almost 25 minutes. So let's see. I'm sure this will look lovely. Somehow I have turned everything upside down. I don't read reversals. So it's 2 of Cups, Strength, 3 of Cups, 9 of Wands, Knight of Swords, the Lovers. That's the Page of Wands, the Queen of Wands, the 4 of Coins. It's all right. It's a lot visually to read this way. This is a little kind of sensory overload for me. I will be honest with you. That said, breaking them up this way, normally when I read, so the deck that I'm reading most with right now, oops, hold on one sec. Is the Sun and Moon, sorry, let's put my microphone back on, is the Sun and Moon Tarot, which has a massive border, and I love that. So it just helps me feel like I'm seeing the picture a little better. I think, I'm having a love affair with this deck that I was not expecting. I adore it. I'm going to be doing an intro, I think a foundational tarot class early next year. I think this is the deck we're going to use. Anyway, I like a border on a deck because I do find it a little overwhelming. That said, what people like about borderless decks is that you can kind of blend them into one picture and sort of read the story, in that way. I'm going to zoom in, actually, because it's a busy deck. I mean, but like one of my favorite decks is the Japaridza, which is pretty busy. Again, it's got borders, and I would never trim the borders on that. But I can see the titles pretty well. I know what cards I'm looking at pretty quickly. And I could just read this, the way that I always do. We start with the Two of Cups. Let's say it's a general reading. The Two of Cups, I would say the Two of Cups partnered with Strength, which is how I traditionally would read. I start in the middle, I come up here. You've seen this before, but whatever, I'll do it. There's a powerful attraction, right? Strength, Two of Cups. Twos are magnetic. Strength is strength. Powerful attraction, powerful emotional attraction. But I wouldn't say it's necessarily to a person. I would say it's to a community or a three-way. Of really, really kind of Nine of Wands. I tend lately, for some reason, my readings tend to get very sexual very quickly. I don't know why. The Nine of Wands gives rough sex. Again, like nines are rough, nines are tiring, nines are pushing. Right? And fire, wands, right? So, and this guy looks a little bloody, a little beaten, but also a little sort of, he reminds me of, there was this terrible movie called The Invitation about like a vampire situation, and the main guy kind of looks like that. So there's like I might start reading that this person is having a powerful attraction to the idea of group sex, of kink. That would be a stronger thing if I had gotten the devil in the reading. It's not there, so I'll tone that down a little bit. Plus, there's more of a water vibe throughout than a fire vibe. The fire vibe is really the only fire is the nine. There's a lot of fire, there's a lot of attraction. But there's a community, maybe, of people. So here I'm going to revise myself. I'm not going to go sexy. I'm going to go, there's a real powerful attraction to a community of fighters, of people who are believers, strong, dedicated, battle-scarred, but powerful people. And it's igniting in you the Knight of Swords and the Lovers, right? So we've already looked at the Two of Cups, but again, the Lovers here, and the Knight of Swords is kind of carrying the fighter aspect into this row. So Knight of Swords is ready to go into battle and fight for this thing that they love, this thing that they're drawn to, this power. Fight for something they love. The Page of Wands, I was wrong. The Page of Wands is here too. The Queen of Cups and the Four of Coins is giving a little bit of not necessarily a full understanding of what it is they're fighting for. There's maybe a little bit of naivete heading into this battle. They're operating based on a intuitive perception that's very emotional, but that doesn't necessarily fully understand outside of their usual perspective. And I say that because of the Four of Coins, fours being stable, of being somewhat conservative, coins being somewhat banal. They are not seeing life any differently than they used to, and they're not even really seeing the cause they're fighting for fully. What they are seeing is the sense of belonging that they're getting. But they haven't actually shifted their perspectives about life at all. So while they're fighting for something they don't fully understand. And then, of course, I would read the columns. We've got Strength, the Knight of Swords, and the Page of Wands. Despite the fact that they're not fully understanding it, their willingness to fight for this is huge. And their potential to actually affect change is huge, too. Because they're smart, they're powerful, but they're impulsive and not fully understanding. They're tending to act from passion rather than full consideration. Of the Swords cards, I would say the Knight is the least likely to think twice. They are very drawn by this community. I would say that they're very influenced by influencers in this case. Even though they're probably a little more skilled, a little more intuitive, a little more aware than others are in the community, they're very drawn to it. And that's okay. That actually may lead to at least an emotional perspective shift because of the 3. I would also finally say that they love really going in... Sorry about that. My SD card, whatever these are called, ran out. Anyway, they love going into battle. That's sort of how they feel most stable in life, weirdly, is fighting for what they love. So that's kind of their MO. But I would say that with the Four of Coins as the final thing, they're actually fundamentally conservative. Because they aren't... They're fighting for things they think they love, but they're not really going in with a clear understanding of what it is they're doing. And again, they haven't changed. The Four of Coins knights to the Three of Cups, which to me shows what the influence that they're under from these people who influence them. And again, knights to the Knight of Swords, who, again, very, very unlikely to think clearly. Even though what Swords cards should be doing is learning, this person is not doing that. They're acting without learning. Any other knightings that are interesting to me? I mean, the Knight also knights to the Knight of Wands. The Page of Wands knights to the Lovers and to the Three of Cups. So again, there's this very kind of emotionally motivated behavior that they get lit up very easily. The Lovers knights to the Strength card, it definitely... They feel things so deeply that they can't help but be motivated that way. This is core to who they are, I would say, that Lovers card. I would be not thrilled for this person to a certain degree because I think there's danger in not considering what you're really fighting for. And there's actually a risk that they're going to get stuck in a rut by constantly fighting for things they don't fully understand. So the advice in this reading would be to really add more swords to the equation, to think more clearly, think more critically. The Knight of Swords here is not serving us in its best role. And this is a thing, that's interesting maybe this is interesting for folks, who are starting out. Like, how do I know when the Knight of Swords is not his best self or their best self? In this case, the cards that are influencing it heavily, the cards that it knights to, the Four of Coins, the Nine of Wands, in this reading are giving a little bit more of a negative vibe. So the Knight of Swords, as an impulsive thinker, should be learning. And whenever there's a 4, they're not. Probably not. Now, there are times where the 4 of coins, or any 4, indicates sustainability. But this Knight is not a sustainable card because it's all forward. It's all energy. So you can't sustain that. So this is sustaining something unsustainable. Does that make sense? So that's just a little look in. I want to lay out the cards again and just see how I feel about just identifying, what cards are coming up immediately. I'm going to get a little rough with this deck. Make it call me daddy. You know how it goes. No, that's not how it goes. I won't do a whole reading again. I just sort of want to see... Because actually, I quite enjoyed that spread. I found it very easy to read. I found it quite charming. Well, the message wasn't quite charming, but I found the reading itself pleasurable. As a reader, I found it silky. I don't think I've ever talked about this before, but I feel like there are silky readings and sandpapery readings. Sandpapery readings are harder. They are harder on the eyes. They are difficult to fully connect with. Silky readings, they flow. So Hanged Man, Ace of Coins, 5 of Cups, the Star, 3 of Wands. So actually, I was worried that I wouldn't be able to see the titles. I can see them pretty well. I do kind of wish there was a little bit... I really love that magician. Wow, he's handsome. I'm so terrible, Muriel. Yeah, I can see the titles pretty well, and it feels pretty organic. The reason I would like Borders is, again, because it's just a little sensory overload for me. But I will say, if you do space the cards out a little bit more, it does contain them a little bit. And I tend to read on very dark, very plain reading surfaces, because, again, I don't like distraction. Another thing I like about busy decks, my favorite being the Margareta Peterson. Busy isn't a great word for this deck, but is that you can sometimes be surprised by things in the image that you hadn't seen. So that I find very sexy as well. I like this version. I will say that. I like this edition a lot more. I think it could have gone more in the diversity direction. I think we could stand to see more body diversity. I think we could stand to see more disabled people. I think, given that, this version is an improvement on the old one in every way. So, I will probably use this. So there you have it. This is a look at the... I was still, though, sort of having a love affair with this deck. I don't know why. The second edition of the Bonefire Tarot by Gabby Angus West, released by Red Feather Schiffer. Big, I think, improvement production-wise, quality-wise. It is more representational. Whether or not that is enough is another story. Many of the cards that have been improved, or not improved, have been changed are, I think, improvements. And I think it's an evocative deck. I think that I quite... I find in this edition more to like than I did in this edition, and I can absolutely see using this, and I can absolutely see clients loving it. So there we go, lovely humans. This is the Bonefire Tarot second edition, which really isn't the second edition. It's more like the fourth, because I think there were at least 2 indie editions ahead of time. But there we go. I hope you enjoyed this rambly, exhaustive look at this deck. I'm in love with this magician. Oh my god. Sorry, folks. Have a great, attempt at the day. Be good.